Ready for another deep dive? Today, we're going to get up close and personal with a script that's like a linguistic bridge connecting a bunch of languages in South Asia.
Yeah, we're talking about the Bengali Assamese script, or as some folks call it, Eastern Nagari. And trust me, both names hint at a pretty fascinating history.
Right. Now, if you know a little Sanskrit, you're in for a treat, because this script's roots run deep in that ancient language. Our mission today, to crack the code of this script, see what makes it tick, we'll wander through history, uncover its secrets, and hopefully by the end you'll see it's way more than just, letters on a page.
Absolutely.
Now, you might think, okay, Bengali, Assamese, 2 languages, got it. But this script, it's kind of an overachiever.
Oh, yeah.
It's used for a surprising number of other languages.
It's true. Take, for example, Santali.
Santali.
Yeah, it's a language spoken by these indigenous communities across India, Bangladesh, and even Nepal. And it just goes to show you how one script can bridge cultures, bring people together.
Like a common thread, right?
Exactly. And this isn't just like a modern thing either. This script's been around for ages.
Really?
Oh, yeah, centuries. Think Old and Middle Indo-Aryan languages.
Wow.
Back then, it was the communication tool for Eastern India. Imagine that.
That's wild. So it's like holding a piece of history in your hands.
In a way, yeah. I mean, think about it. This script is still used today to write Sanskrit, preserving ancient wisdom, just like people did centuries ago.
So where do we even begin with, like, the origin story of this script? How'd it come to be? Where does it fit in the grand scheme of all the writing systems out there?
Well, think of it this way. Every script, it's like it has its own family tree, right? Branches connecting different scripts across time and space.
Okay, I like that. A family tree of scripts.
Yeah. And in this case, the ancestor, the grandparent, if you will, is the Gaudi script, G-A-U-D-I.
Gaudi script. Okay, so how do we get from Gaudi to Bengali Assamese?
Well, over time, that Gaudi script, it branched out, evolving. And not just into Bengali Assamese, but also Odia, another big language in eastern India. And get this, even Mithili, which is mainly spoken in Nepal and parts of India, it has roots in this Gaudi script too.
Wow, okay. This family tree is way more connected than I thought.
It really is. And this split, it happened sometime around the 14th, 15th centuries. Now, Bengali Assamese, they decided, hey, we like the original Gaudi style, let's stick with that.
Makes sense.
But Odia, they went on their own little adventure, visually speaking.
How so?
They developed these really distinctive curved tops on their letters, like really noticeable. It's pretty cool how these scripts, they kind of develop their own personalities,
So what about Mithili? They stick with the Gaudi look too.
Well, they still use a really similar script, especially for writing Sanskrit, actually. It's really a testament to how interconnected this whole world of scripts is, even across different languages.
It's like those little quirks that siblings have, even though they come from the same family, right?
Exactly. It's those little differences that make things interesting. Remember how we were saying earlier that Assamese, it actually has an extra letter?
Oh, right, for the W or V sound.
Yeah, the one Bengali was like, nah, we're good.
And then there's that whole thing with how they each write the R sound, too.
It's wild, right? And these might seem like small details, but they really give you a glimpse into how pronunciation can shift over time, even within, like, closely related languages.
It's like how families have those little pronunciation quirks that get passed down through generations, almost like a linguistic heirloom.
Totally.
Yeah.
Those quirks tell a story about where you come from, the journey your language has taken. And it's the same with these script variations. They give each language its own flavor.
Man, the more we dive into this script, the more I realize how much history and culture are woven into every little stroke.
Oh, absolutely. We've really only scratched the surface here, but I feel like even just this little glimpse, it gives you a whole new perspective on these languages.
Speaking of scratching the surface, we talked a bit ago about how this script made the leap from, like, handwritten stuff to the printing press with the East India Company and all that. But what I'm curious about is, were there any hiccups along the way? Like, how'd they actually adapt the script for printing?
Now you're getting into the nitty-gritty. And yeah, it definitely wasn't all smooth sailing. I mean, adapting any script for printing has its challenges.
Right.
And the Bengali Assamese script, with all its cool features, it definitely threw a few curveballs.
Like what?
Well, remember that whole inherent vowel thing we talked about? And those consonant clusters?
Yeah, those were pretty intricate.
Well, those things make perfect sense in handwriting, right? But when you're trying to create a printing system, they become a whole other ballgame.
I can imagine.
Imagine trying to fit all those vowels and consonant combinations onto those little metal blocks. That's been a real head scratcher.
So how'd they pull it off? How do you solve the inherent vowel dilemma when you're dealing with metal blocks and ink?
All right, so get this. Instead of making separate types for every single vowel consonant combo, which would have been a nightmare, they came up with this system using diacritics.
Diacritics.
Yeah, those little marks,
The ones that hang out above or below the main letter.
Exactly. Those tiny things are like the unsung heroes of typography. They tell you which vowel sound to use, so you don't need a million different pieces of type. Brilliant, right?
So instead of having like a separate block for kaki, goo,
Yeah.
they could just use the K and then slap on the right diacritic.
Exactly. It was a super elegant solution, Practical, but still accurate. But vowels weren't the only challenge. Those consonant clusters we talked about, those were tricky too.
Oh, right, because in handwriting, they sort of like merge together sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And those ligatures, as they're called, they're beautiful, don't get me wrong. But for printing, it's a whole other story.
Because you'd need a separate type for every single combination.
Right. You got it. So Wilkins and Karmakar, they had to get creative.
Yeah.
Sometimes they simplified things a bit for clarity. Other times they made special type pieces to really capture the essence of those handwritten forms. It was all about finding that balance between being faithful to the script and making it work for printing.
Man, the amount of work, the innovation, it's incredible. These guys were really paving the way for Bengali and Assamese literature to explode onto the scene.
Absolutely. They were pioneers. But it makes you wonder, though, did this whole printing press thing, did it actually change the script itself in the long run?
Oh, interesting. Did people start writing it differently because of printing?
Exactly. I mean, think about it. Before printing, handwriting, it was like the Wild West. Everyone had their own style, regional differences. It was all over the place.
Yeah, I can see that.
But with printing, suddenly you needed consistency. You needed a standardized system so that everyone was on the same page, literally.
So the printing press, it was like this unexpected force for standardization.
Kind of, yeah. Printers and publishers, they became these, accidental language guardians in a way. They started developing style guides, standardized forms, and they looked to the most common, the most legible handwriting styles for inspiration.
So it wasn't like they just decided this is how it's going to be out of the blue.
No, not at all. It was a collaboration. Scholars, writers, printers, they all had a hand in shaping the script for this new era of printed books.
It's amazing how something as simple as printing could have such a ripple effect.
Oh, for sure. It wasn't just about making copies anymore. It was about influencing how people wrote, how they saw the language itself.
So this push for standardization, it didn't just stop once printing became the norm.
Not at all. It kept going. I mean, think about it. New technologies, new printing techniques, they all pop up, and the script just rolls with the punches, adapting, evolving.
So it's like this ongoing conversation between language and technology, even today.
Always.
Yeah.
The digital age, with computers and smartphones, it's just the latest chapter in this story. But that, my friend, is a deep dive for another day.
You got that right. We've given our listeners a lot to chew on already. We've gone from ancient times to the digital age today. But there's this one thing, this really cool detail about this script we've been talking about that I kind of want to circle back to.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
So remember those tiny little variations between how Bengali and Assamese actually write things down?
You mean how, even though they come from the same script family,
Yeah.
they each have their own way of writing, like certain sounds?
Exactly. And it got me thinking, those differences, they're small, but they kind of say a lot about how language works,
Absolutely. It's like those little differences are actually clues to a much bigger story.
Right. Take how they each write the R sound or that whole W and V sound thing.
Exactly. They show us that language is never really static, even when we think of it as one system, one script. It's constantly evolving, branching out.
So even though Bengali and Assamese, they have that shared history with the Gaudi script and all that, those tiny variations, they're like little hints that they've each been on their own journey.
Exactly. Think of it like two branches growing from the same strong trunk. They share that same base, that same structure. But as they grow, they kind of reach in different directions.
That makes so much sense. It's like those variations, they're like the branches, each one showing us the unique path that Bengali or Assamese took.
Exactly. Over time, the way people pronounce things, it changes, even just a little bit. And those changes, they leave their mark on the script.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. Something as small as a different way to write one letter can tell you so much about where a language has been.
It's true. Every little detail tells a story.
It reminds us that there's so much diversity, so much variation, even within what we might think of as like one language, one culture.
Absolutely. It's all about looking closer, digging deeper, and that's what we've tried to do today. We've traveled through time, peeked behind the curtain of this incredible script, and I hope our listeners have come away with a little more wonder, a little more appreciation for just how powerful and beautiful language can be.
Well said. And hey, maybe this deep dive will inspire someone out there to start their own linguistic adventure.
I hope so. There's a whole world of scripts out there, each one with its own fascinating story.
Until next time, happy exploring, everyone.